Greetings, family. Joyous rising, great rising. This is Dr. Kia Pruitt. Hello. Today is Thursday, March the 2nd, 2023, and the time is exactly 12:12 p.m. It's so good to see you all. Wherever Sister Karen is, it's 11:11 there. So, yes, 11:11 there, or 12:11 here, and about to be 12:12. So it's so good to see everybody. I hope you're having a fabulous Thursday, darling. Yes, it's almost Friday. So thank you for being here. Hi, Patriot Mom. Great rising, everybody. Hopefully, you got to see all of the interviews that I've been doing. We had the pleasure of actually bringing on Andy Scheckman on Tuesday morning, and I think it was about 8:45 he was on, and then after that we had Gold Star Mother Susan Price. So please watch those interviews from Tuesday. Gold Star Mother Susan Price, as well as our a beloved patriot by the name of Prime Minister. They came on and talked about 1,000 years of peace that we're ushering in. And we also talked about how this war for our freedoms was really about bringing in restitution and release and some type of help for our children. So Prime Minister talked about the book that he read, about how some atrocities had occurred with our children and how he came to understand this fight that we've been going through worldwide was because of the things that were not only happening to us, we the people, but also to our children. So he spoke on that. And then Gold Star Mother Susan Price also shared a little bit about how her son was a Marine and he was fighting against the deep state with the white hats to deliver the children and to fight for our freedoms. And unfortunately, he lost his life in the battle. But Gold Star Mother Susan Price is using all that she's been through and the energy from her son that she still has as he lives through her to gather we the people and to help us to continue the fight as we usher in 1,000 years of peace. So that was a very, very touching interview that we did on Tuesday. And we talked about what's been happening behind the scenes and how our children were locked in cages and all type of things that most people don't know about that will come out through the emergency broadcast system announcement. And then Prime Minister, who many of you here know, who was really engaged in a battle for many years. They took down all of his platforms, and every time he would try to create new platforms, the deep state would just take his platforms down. And then finally, YouTube told him that he is banned for life. However, he's still in the fight. Gold Star Mother Susan Price introduced me to him. So we talked about this fight, and then he led us in a very emotional prayer on Tuesday. So go back and look at that video, family. It was touching. I broke down. He broke down. Mother was, really hurt. It was just really powerful and passionate in terms of how he led the prayer and talked to the Creator on behalf of our children. So please go back and look at those two videos. Also, Gold Star Mother Susan Price will be back on Monday to tell her story about being a mother of a fallen soldier and what that means, how she got to meet President Trump, number 45, and how he acknowledged her and just what it means to be a Gold Star mother. So please be on the lookout for that introduction. I've already introduced her to you and you to her, but please be on the lookout for that interview. So I love you all. Thank you so much. Good morning, Grand Rising. You all know I've been talking a lot about gold and how the whole world is now turning to gold as money. And now they're being very vocal about it. When Andy Scheckman came on my show on Tuesday, and even the week prior, last Tuesday, he talked about how not only is the world moving towards gold, but so are the states. And you all know I've been talking about how 42 states repealed the taxes on gold. That's very important for everybody to know because we are moving to the gold standard. So many things are happening behind the scenes, and it's my great pleasure to bring them to you so that you can know that Nasara is happening. That's another video that you all probably saw me do. I was talking with the elders, and that video talks about it says Dr. Kia Pruitt and the elders speak on Nasara, or something to that effect. So I will show you that video as well, where I talked about how behind the scenes we can see Nasara actually happening. And although people are saying nothing's going on, when you know where to look, you can see that we are having our freedoms restored. So I've been talking about how 42 states have removed taxes from gold and silver. That's very important, because when you remove or repeal the taxes from precious metals, you then are acknowledging that precious metals are now lawful money. So this is something that lets us see that NASARA is in action. NASARA, the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, is occurring before our eyes. I've presented this article many times, but in this article, what it says is that there were 42 states that removed the taxes. And this article, as you can see, was just published on last month, February the 5th. So it also says in this article that not only have the 42 states repealed the taxes, but there were 5 states that actually had, let me see if I could find it, 5 states that still had bills on the table. So once we presented that article, Andy Scheckman came on to my platform and talked about how Kansas and Wyoming also are now introducing legislation to repeal taxes from precious metals. Now, remember, before, nobody would say we were moving to the gold standard. So it kind of seemed like, well, I won't say nobody, but most people weren't talking like that. So it kind of seemed like I was making this stuff up. But having Andy Scheckman to come on and also confirm what I've been saying was really validating, and it made me feel so encouraged. It made me feel good. But what I want you to see now is not only have those 42 states repealed the taxes from precious metals, thus releasing precious metals to be used now as money, then we had Andy to talk about Kansas and Wyoming. Now we see this article that was just published February the 22nd that says Mississippi legislature voted overwhelmingly to end sales taxes on gold and silver. So more and more states are coming forward to say that they're taking away the taxes. It's unlawful to tax money. And according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, the only thing that can be used to pay off the debts are gold and silver. And according to Constitution, a dollar is actually defined as a fixed weight in silver. You all know that House Resolution 5404 was put forward. It was a bill put forward by Alexander Mooney to actually define the dollar as a fixed weight in gold. Then that was in 2018. And then, he reintroduced the Gold Standard Act in October, I think it was, of 2022 to define the dollar as a fixed weight in gold. So we can see that they've been actually setting the stage to return us all to the gold standard. And you all know over here, I see my son is calling me. You all know over here, let me send him a text, that this was called, Project Sandman, when behind the scenes, all the countries, 210 countries agreed that when triggered, they would drop the United States dollar and go towards gold as money. So the trigger was actually Putin, when 46 put sanctions on Putin for going over into Ukraine to dismantle the nefarious activities over there. He put sanctions, 46 put sanctions on Putin, which then inspired him to drop the United States dollar and then lead the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, I'm almost done, to drop the United States dollar and move towards the gold standard. Then Saudi Arabia joined the BRICS Union and all these other countries, so that now they say about 85 to 90% of the world has actually gone towards the gold standard. But we know all exporting nations have actually left the United States dollar and gone towards gold. Now that made people in America nervous because they were like, what's happening to us? Are we just going to be stuck with the dollar? Is this why inflation is so high? Yes, it is why inflation is so high. But we're not going to be stuck using a deflated currency for long because of the 42 states that are clapping back. Their response is also, they were a part of the 209 countries that agreed to drop the United States dollar, thus ending the United States hegemony, financial economic hegemony, and they agreed to return to the gold standard. So the clapback, the response was the 42 states repealing taxes from precious metals. The latest in the game is Mississippi. State lawmakers of both houses have just voted overwhelmingly to exempt physical gold, silver, platinum, and palladium coins and bullion from the Mississippi state's sales tax, sending a bill to Governor Tate for his signature. So that was the introduction of a bill. And you can believe it will pass. If Governor Reeves signs the bill next week, or if he simply chooses not to veto it, Mississippi will become the 43rd state to exempt sales of sound money from the state sales tax. The effective date is July 1st, 2023. I don't know if you all remember this, but I told you when I first came out with the article stating that 42 states repeal sales tax. I was the first one. The first one made that announcement. I just want you to know that other states would do it, and it will happen this year. So you can see the 43rd state is actually Mississippi. Every one of Mississippi's neighbors, Alabama, Louisiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, have already stopped taxing the monetary metals. Most recently, Tennessee ended this tax in 2022, and Arkansas and Ohio eliminated this tax in 2021. So can you see what's happening, family? We are moving to the gold standard. That is one of the components of Nasara and Jasara, to return the republics of all the world, of the countries of all the world, their lawful government. The republics being the law of the land. We're on the land. So whereas those entities that usurp governments were using maritime law, law on the sea, law based on the water, admiralty law, we are on the land. And our Constitution is the Constitution for the United States of America, for our republic. And other constitutions are based on common law and natural law, or laws of the land. So that's what I wanted to show you in regards to what is happening with the gold standard. Now, some people have asked me, but what about the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies? Some people are really concerned that that will move forward. And I keep saying that there's no way they will allow it. Even if they, being the people in power, did create this central bank digital currency and then surveil us, say that everybody all across the world has to use this one digital coin or digital coins, and they be surveilled and they have to be monitored and it'll be dictated how and when and or why you would use this currency. I keep saying it won't be able to move forward. But even if it were to move forward, you have to know that you are sovereign. You have to learn how to operate as a national. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that. Okay. But look at this. Look, a United States legislator, this one actually says legislators introduced a bill that would prohibit creation of an American CBDC, or central bank digital currency. But there was one specific congressman actually who initiated that. His name is Tom Emmer. He's from Minnesota. He introduced this bill that would prohibit the Federal Reserve from issuing the CBDC directly to anyone. If you move towards the middle of this article, it talks about how the bill was to amend the Federal Reserve Act to prohibit the Federal Reserve banks from offering certain products or services directly to an individual. It will prohibit the use of central bank digital currency for monetary policy and for other purposes. And then it talks about how the act may be titled as the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act. Now, a lot of people were a little nervous about this because they know this is something that 46 is trying to move forward. You're welcome. It's my great pleasure. However, keep in mind that this is something that the Federal Reserve has done by trying to, or initiated by trying to exert power. But remember, in actuality, this might be their minions, because in actuality, 45 put the duties of the Federal Reserve underneath the United States Treasury, right? Because the United States Treasury is the only entity, according to the Constitution, that may deal with any type of monetary issues. So this was an article that actually came out by Zero Hedge, but I want to show you some of the other articles that go into a little bit of detail of this Anti-Surveillance Act. And here is one. I want to show you there are two more. Let's see if this is the one I want to talk about. No, I think it's this one here. So let's look at this one a little bit. It says, United States Congressman Tom Emmer introduced a bill that will prohibit the Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC directly to anyone. This is produced or published by BitcoinMagazine.com. The bill, titled the CBDC Anti-Surveillance Act, State Act, details that except as specifically authorized under this act, a Federal Reserve bank may not offer products or services directly to an individual, or maintain an account on behalf of an individual, or issue a central bank digital currency directly to an individual. It goes on further to detail specifically that the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Open Market Committee may not use any central bank digital currency to implement monetary policy. So this is something that Representative Emmer said specifically in his tweet when he announced the bill. He said any digital version of the dollar must uphold our American values of privacy, individual sovereignty. You see that word? Because we're restoring the republic. When you know to look for keywords, you know to look for keywords to see what it is that they're saying without saying it. They're saying you cannot have a bill or any type of digital dollar that will not uphold our values of privacy. So in other words, if you come up with something digital, it has to uphold our values, it has to uphold our sovereignty and free market competitiveness. Anything less opens the door to the development of a dangerous surveillance tool. The bill aims to stem the creation of a CBDC due to the various issues many see as potential results of the creation of the American CBDC. So I'm going to put this article in the description section for you. Thank you so much. Who's that? Matthew? You're always taking care of us over here. I appreciate you, Matthew DeGregorio, for the monetary blessing. You're so awesome. You always take care of me. I appreciate you. May the Creator bless you with long life, prosperity, and peace. So pay attention to the wording. If it doesn't uphold our sovereignty, if it goes against our privacy, it will not be allowed. That is the bill that is introduced. It will pass. But I'm going to talk to you about what you would do even if they did allow for the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, to move forward. But I want to show you the most recent article that was on this digital currency, what it said. And because I believe this one came out March the 1st. So this one came out actually just yesterday. Let me show you the date. Here's the publication date, March the 1st, 2023 at 9:49, just so you can see that for yourself. Federal Reserve states it would issue a CBDC only with Congress and public support. That means it can only happen if you allow it. It has to have public support. The way you can get around these things happening is saying, I do not consent. But there's another way. Even if they did do this, you cannot consent as a sovereign and as a national. So hold on one minute. Let's get down here. I like this right here. It says, while the wholesale CBDC could only be accessed by financial institutions, the retail digital dollar would be equivalent to cash and used by everyone, is what they're saying. However, the Fed is adamant about ensuring that all the important arms of the system are in unison when it comes to the issuance of a digital currency. The Fed has emphasized that it will only issue a CBDC with the support of the executive branch and Congress, and we see Congress is giving them pushback. And more broadly, the public, we have to consent. The article goes on to say that some people still stand against the CBDC. They're getting some pushback. While the government is working to bring it in, some politicians are working to keep this at bay. In an announcement on February 22nd, Tom Emmer, who is the United States representative from Minnesota, introduced this Anti-Surveillance Act, CBDC Anti-Surveillance Act. What are the three components? It prohibits the Fed from issuing the CBDC directly to anyone. It bars the Fed from using a CBDC to implement monetary policy and control the economy. It requires that the Fed CBDC projects to be transparent to Congress and to the American people. So it goes on to say that the community is split on whether or not they should allow this. But I can already tell you that I know that we are against a central bank digital currency, and we will not stand for it. Now, what I'm working on is bringing on somebody who's going to talk to us, what did he call it, about how to operate as a non-citizen and how to operate as a national. This gentleman has learned from the best. He doesn't pay any bills. He's going to talk to you about how you don't have to pay bills because you already have an estate and you have trust created. This gentleman who's going to come on and talk to us about how to operate in the private is a sovereign person. No, he's not a sovereign citizen, because a citizen is a slave. You cannot be sovereign and a citizen. What I'm saying to you is what the republic is going to be restored. But there are people, and I've been saying this for a long time, that have been operating in the private as a non-citizen, as a national, not paying bills, not paying taxes, because they know how to decentralize their lives, how to not allow the federal government to control them, because the government is not federal, it's an unlawful corporate entity that usurped authority from our people, from we the people, and from our republic. Now, the republic is being restored, but again, I'm going to bring somebody on to talk to you about how you cannot pay bills, how you can offset debt. You can do it yourself. This is what I'm saying when you realize you're not a citizen and you're a national. So thank you so much, Marla Rutherford. May the Lord Yahshua multiply you 1,000-fold. Wow, thank you. According to Deuteronomy, I appreciate you so much. May Yahweh, the Creator, bless you with long life, prosperity, and peace. So I'm not going to be long today, family. I do have a few things to do, but I wanted to show you how the CBDC is being attacked. They won't allow it. Our clapback is saying, no, I'm going to go against this. I do not consent. And we're going to be using gold as money. And if you need to look at some of my videos and how I talked about how we're returning to gold as money, you can look at it on my channel. Now, in the meantime, you see things like banks being in trouble, banks failing, banks and what else? Mortgage bankers and mortgage lending officers actually being laid off. So the reason this is happening is it supports my thesis that the National Economic Security and Reformation Act, also known as NASARA, is being implemented behind the scenes. Wells Fargo just laid off more people. This was February the 22nd. More mortgage bankers. Why? Because mortgages will be done away with under NASARA. Mortgages and all debts will be eliminated under NASARA. Wells Fargo laid off hundreds of mortgage bankers this week as part of their recent strategic shift, citing they're citing that, they're talking about some reason, but we know we can get into that article, citing people with knowledge of the matter. Oh, so people who know what's going on are actually, they're being used as the source to say that Wells Fargo is laying off the mortgage lenders, but mortgages are unlawful. You should never have had to pay for your housing because you already have a trust. And what they do is they have a promissory note. And when you sign it, you are actually turning over a power of attorney to these bankers to gain access to your trust. And they pay themselves first and then they charge you with interest. So this is the type of thing that's been going on behind the scenes, but they're being laid off for that purpose because there wouldn't be no more mortgages, there would be no automobile loans, there wouldn't be no more student loans, none of that. All that will go away. While we're on the topic of bankers, let's look at what's happening with Bank of America. Bank of America just recently had to pay a whole bunch of fines and penalty in the billions. Banks are failing, and there will only be a certain amount left after they get finished with these nefarious institutions that have exacted usury or made us pay these exorbitant interest rates, not only for us, but the farmers and people all over the world when they were controlled by those nefarious beings that were in power. However, these banks now have to pay penalties for what they've done to us, as well as they have to pay penalties and or be closed if they're not Basel compliant, if they don't acknowledge gold as a tier 1 asset, if they don't restructure their lending practices, if they don't become transparent, if they stop doing bail-ins, because bail-outs are now no longer lawful under the Dodd-Frank Act. But if they don't become compliant, they will pay penalties and they will close. The latest is the Bank of America, which had to pay a total of $1.2 billion in penalties, settlements in 2022. This was published February the 23rd, 2023. So in one major amount, one major amount was $354 million that was part of a settlement. So they're paying for what they have done to us. They've had to pay $1.2 billion in expenses for litigation and regulatory investigations. The total includes fines and settlements, according to a company filing. The cost was a big jump from $164 million recorded in 2021 and $823 million in 2020. So this is something that needs to be brought to our attention so that we can see that it's true. Banks are going down. You have to learn how to become your own bank. And if you saw my interview with Andy Sheckman, the CEO of Miles Franklin, on Tuesday, he talked about how one of the best ways, to go around the central bank is to invest in precious metals. And somebody asked him, well, where do we do with these precious metals? And he said, look, put them in a sacred place, but don't put them in a safe deposit box. Do not put anything in a safe deposit box, anything, that the bank can get access to, and anything that somebody can steal out of. He said, if you have to hide it in the walls, under the floorboard, in some type of vault, in your own possession, and dig a grave, whatever you have to do. This is a way, when you have precious metals, that you have actually sound money, real constitutional money, and you can trade in it and you can use it as wealth, because that's what it is. And you can pass on that wealth to your posterity. The scripture says that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, and the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. So for us that have been righteous, for we the people, all these fines and penalties that these banks are paying, that money is going back into the trust, and it's going to come back to we the people. So getting back to Bank of America, let's look at what their fines were. And I'll show you this. Here's the introduction. Here's the violations here, the scheduling violations, but here's the type of violations. And I have this document about this, about how much they owe and to whom they owe, the Bank of America. So these are the violations: legal lending limit violations. So they violated the legal limits, non-conforming loans to insiders, non-conforming affiliate transactions, non-conforming real estate loans, non-conforming securities, securing loans, securities unlawfully acquired or held, non-conforming other real estate, charged off non-conforming assets, and other violations. And then the last one says non-conformance with guidelines incorporated into regulations. So this document goes into detail of all the regulations that they have violated and how much they actually had to pay in fines and penalties. So we can see that a lot is going on, and that these banks will have to pay for how they treated we the people. Remember, it was the farmers that took the United States Incorporated and the Federal Reserve to the world courts and say that they have been mistreating the farmers, the backbone of our country, the backbone of every single civilization all across the world. That's the farmers who feed us. When they took the central banks to court, it was determined that the central banks would give them exorbitant interest rates, would force them to use certain seeds and do certain things to cattle to poison us, or if they did not consent, they will have their land confiscated from them. They will have to pay so many fines and penalties and fees and taxes that they couldn't continue as farmers. And then some of them also lost their lives. This is how deep this went. So when the farmers took them to court, they won their court case against the Federal Reserve and the United States Corporation, as well as Empress Verdiasi Gaston L. Turner Bay, but she was living at the time, the Empress of the indigenous peoples here. She represented the indigenous peoples here and won her case, citing that the United States government has stolen land from the indigenous people here, and she won a case for $86 quadrillion. Both she and the farmers were told that when a republic is restored and we are returned to constitutional law, that everybody all across the world would be compensated by having all debts erased during a debt jubilee, and by having money deposited into their account in the amount of at least, I would say, $20 million. So that's what I wanted to show you today. We do have some other news to talk about. Let's see. We talked about Wells Fargo. Let's look at China. What they're doing right now is they are kind of like slowly dripping information out. For some of us, it kind of looks like it's, what am I saying? Kind of look like we're reiterating the same thing, but it's because you've known before everybody else what's been going on behind the scenes, because I'm telling you, right? You have people like me that's going to tell you what's going on behind the scenes. Let's look at Iraq. I forgot to put that in the title. This is Iraqi news. So this is about the Central Bank of Iraq, how the central banks have now created an electronic platform for external transfer. So you'll be able to transfer the dinar, or their money, their new money that's now asset backed, via an electronic platform. And they're talking about how it's ready. And this is the beginning of solutions for banking reform and for the exchange rate stability. Now, you all know that al-Sudani, the prime minister of Iraq, stated that he was revaluing the IQD, or the Iraqi dinar, against the United States dollar. They had to create certain things to stabilize the Iraqi dinar. So it talks about how this particular person here, Samir al-Nusari, is the advisor to the Association of the Iraqi Private Banks. He's the one who confirmed that the electronic platform is ready, and that it's the solution for banking reform, and that it places a gap between the official and parallel exchange rate. So I'm going to keep you updated as I learn more about what's going on. But he did say in the interview with Economy News that the instructions aim to enhance the role of the banking system and non-banking financial institutions in securing foreign currency to the final beneficiaries and controlling its movement internally and externally. This will lead to controlling and maintaining the stability of the exchange rate, and it complies with the requirement of the anti-money laundering and financing of federal terrorism law, and he cites the number 39 of 2015. So it includes access controls for the platform, transactions, and entities allowed to be financed by law. I will put this in the description section for you to read at your leisure, but I just wanted you to see that things are moving along in Iraq. So when you have an electronic platform that will transfer money, you can see that things are moving along. And again, it says that this is a solution for banking reform and exchange rate stability. Something that I have brought up, I think a week ago. Thank you so much, Curtis. The creator bless you with prosperity and peace. I am always just thrilled when you all contribute financially to the work that I do. You're supporting the research, and I appreciate you. It's such a blessing and an honor and a joy that you consider me that as such, as being worthy to be supported. Thank you very much. Now, I had actually talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, how China and Iraq are now trading with the yuan, and this will also help with stability of the Iraqi dinar. So let's look at this article in case you all didn't see it last week. It's the Iraqi Business News. It says Iraq-China trade to be settled in yuan. The Central Bank of Iraq said that it plans to allow trade from China to be settled directly in the yuan. That's the Chinese currency. So any trading that's going on between Iraq and China will be done in the yuan. The China's currency, what lets you see or further confirms that these countries are dropping the United States dollar. They're not using the USD for trade now. They're using gold, but in this case, they're using the yuan. It says the Central Bank of Iraq said Wednesday that it plans to allow trade from China to be settled directly in yuan in a renewed attempt to stabilize the value of the Iraqi dinar. In a statement, it said foreign trade financing will be conducted through direct channels in China using the Chinese yuan. There are two available options to facilitate. They said the first one, it reinforces the account balances of Iraqi banks, and it strengthens the account balances of Iraqi banks via the CBI, ultimately transferring funds to the final beneficiary in Chinese yuan. Now, it's interesting how we keep talking about China, because China actually, they keep coming out talking about how they can't stand the United States dollar and how the United States is losing its economic and financial hegemony. And basically what they're doing is bringing this all up to let the world see that the United States dollar has lost its world reserve currency status. Let's look at the latest article where China speaks very vehemently against the United States dollar. And what this article says actually is that no holds barred as China launches a frontal assault on the American dollar hegemony. So basically, it just talks about how the United States is losing its world reserve status, world reserve currency status, and it cites Andy Schectman in this article as having talked about this. And I'm going to show you why I think this is interesting, because he's the one who's been talking about what made the United States dollar the world reserve currency. And what he said was, a lot of people know about OPEC, but they don't understand necessarily what has happened behind the scenes. So what made the United States dollar have become a world reserve currency, or have that world reserve currency status, was our agreement with Saudi Arabia that we would trade oil for the United States dollar and protect our Saudi kingdom. And in return, we would force all other nations all across the world to use the United States dollar for trade. That gave us a status that we enjoyed as having economic and financial hegemony. We had control, and if nobody did what we said, they didn't trade with the United States dollar, we would just sanction them, or we would send missiles over there and our military. So our military was backing us up. Once Putin left the United States dollar for trade after 46, put sanctions on him for going into the Ukraine to clean out all those tunnels and everything 46 did put sanctions on him because 46 was allegedly involved in what was going on over there. And if you don't believe that, then you should look at what Kevin McCarthy, the Speaker of the House, says about investigating 46. And he had promised to do that, hold hearings right after the State of the Union address, and he did it. And I've reported on that as well. Oh, it looks like my family's trying to contact me. So it's interesting how once that happened, Putin left the United States dollar, and that led to, I've told you, the BRICS Union leaving: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and then Saudi Arabia left. So when Andy Schectman stood on several platforms and many podcasts and reminded us of what gave us the world reserve currency status, when Saudi Arabia left the United States dollar and dropped it for trade, everybody else, that's when everybody said, okay, it's over. All these countries said it's over. That whole agreement, giving us hegemony, giving us leadership, giving us power, and allowing us to enjoy the status of being the richest, most powerful nation in the world with the military behind us, kind of crumbled. And then all those dollars came flooding back home, which is what further deflated the dollar and the value of the dollar. And as you all know here, when the dollar decreases in value, precious metals increase in value. So let's see what Andy Schectman had to say. I thought it was interesting that they cited him. It says, Andy Schectman, president of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, believes that the ferocity of the Russia sanctions in the wake of the Ukrainian war has had a detrimental effect on global trust in the dollar. And that's very true. Because again, I told you all, Project Sandman stated that when it triggered, all countries would drop the United States dollar, flee to gold as the standard, and then the dollar would plunge to zero, and every dollar denominated asset would then plunge to zero. So Andy Schectman is right. Of course, he is right though, because we've done our extensive research. So let me show you Project Sandman for anybody that has not seen it before. Excuse me. A very important thing for you to note, but they cited Andy Schectman in this article that talks about how China launched an attack against the United States dollar. All China basically said in that article was that it's over for the United States. They no longer have hegemony. They no longer have power and control. And now the people have more power, and that countries are now considering other commodities and other options to use in the stead of the United States dollar. So I keep bringing up Project Sandman because a lot of people didn't know about it. In fact, I only knew that there were 209 countries that agreed behind the scenes to return to the dollar. To return to the gold standard. I've been saying since 2017 that we're going to go back to the gold standard, but I didn't have a name for it. We see here it's called Project Sandman, describes 100+ nation agreement that when triggered, you'll see all the nations simultaneously dump the dollar and thus abandoning the petrodollar. When this decision is triggered, the dollar and all the dollar-denominated assets will plunge to zero overnight. Jim Rickards go on further to say that you will have something called an ICE 9 scenario. And what that means is once the dollar has plunged to zero and all dollar-denominated assets have plunged to zero, everything could freeze. Your bank card could freeze. You might not be able to get access to your money. Anything associated with the dollar could freeze. Any government programs, all those things could freeze. Now, we're hoping that it won't actually go forward because you have countries and states in the United States deciding that they will take their power back and use sound money, constitutional money as a response. So my encouragement today is to let you all know that you have power. You are sovereign. Sov means over, reign in sovereignty, or reign means rule, control. You have rule, control, and power over your own life. Use this as an opportunity to get sound money in your possession. Use it as an opportunity to invest in what's important to you: seeds, farmland, food, family. Because people will say, I don't have money. You keep talking about precious. If you don't have precious metals, you can invest in yourself. You can invest in your family. You can invest in relationships. We can invest in community, because if things go to pot, we see all these corporations laying off jobs. We know that the United States government is falling apart. If all these things happen, if and when, you still have power. You still have the authority to rule over your life. That's right. God bless America and the world. You have power to take control and operate outside of the central banking system and outside the federal government. We no longer consent, because all these things we've been doing actually is voluntary. Paying taxes is voluntary. Letting them take money out of your check is voluntary. I'm going to bring somebody on a platform that's going to tell you how to operate around that if you desire to do it before the republic is restored and returned. So all these things are going to happen. The CBDC is being attacked. Central bank digital currency is being attacked by different legislators. They're not going to allow it to push forward. But my encouragement is, even if it does, you can say, I do not consent. What else? The IRS is being attacked. They were defunded by the Republicans lately. I've already done a podcast about that. This is probably why they're telling millions of Americans in 22 states not to even file taxes. I have family members that filed taxes, and guess what? They didn't get anything back. They were told, we're sorry, we can't process your statement. And they even hang up on you now. Maybe it's because it's only the minions left. The Federal Reserve headquarters office and the IRS office is vacant. Headquarters office is vacant in DC. NASARA is happening. Additionally, the United States, Department of Education will at some point be dismantled because it's federal, but it's not lawful. We've just consented. But that's why you see states like Tennessee and the House Speaker of Tennessee stating that we're not going to accept any of your money. The representative from Tennessee rejected funds from the United States Department of Education. He said, we don't need your $80 billion or however much you want to give us. We reject it. We have money within our state to fund ourselves, because if we depend on the federal government to fund us, according to the state Tennessee representative, then you can control our curriculum and you can control testing, but we're taking power back in the hands of the people. So this is what you're going to see happen. The so-called federal government, which is not lawful, is going to be dismantled, and states will now have more control. You will have more control as you get involved in your state. Okay. And even if you don't get involved in your state, get involved in your family. To all the people that say, Dr. Pruitt, I don't have money to invest in gold and silver, I would encourage you to look at the things that you have that are not necessities. If you're interested in adding silver and gold to your portfolio, if you're interested, look at what's not a necessity and consider, do I have to have this? Could I trade it in for some fiat dollars and then get precious metals? Can I take my dollar with 22 other people in the family and now have $23 and get an ounce of gold? Because just 1 ounce is something that you can pass down to your posterity, your future generations, or your children. Just 1 ounce might be what it takes, especially if you get a relationship with your coin dealer in your neighborhood to buy food or buy your necessities when the system collapses. So consider also other things you can do. Pre-constitution, constitutional silver, coins that were minted before 1964, those are inexpensive. A gold Arum note, you can get it as low as $3.95. This is my thing. You can afford things if you ask, for most of us. If you, instead of saying, I can't, ask yourself, how can I? How can I add precious metals? Because your brain is powerful. The moment you make up your mind, the universe conspires to assist you. The moment you make up the decision that I'm going to do something, then everything in the universe, all these people will start coming around you. All these ideas will flood in of how you can do something. If you don't have fiat dollars, you could maybe cash in bottles. This is just a suggestion. This is what I've encouraged people to do. If you don't want precious metals, get seeds, get food. If none of that is within your reach, then consider investing in yourself. Consider doing what it takes to make sure you ascend to higher dimensions as these energies are flooding the planet to help us, because we are moving to 5D. This is the age of Aquarius into which we're entering. We are moving to higher dimensions. And I believe it was, who was that? It was a metaphysician. Who was the metaphysician that sold colloidal silver? His name escapes me. He talked about 5D. Oh my God, his name escapes me. He talked about 5D, talked about colloidal silver. He passed in 2012. I cannot think of his name. Somebody can think of his name. Please put his name. He had a doctorate. Metaphysics was his thing. Do you all remember who that was? But anyway, he talked about ascending into 5D. Invest in yourself. Eat well. Oh, my family's trying to call me. Eat well, live well, drink clean water, eat real fruits and vegetables, live, living. Yes, living fruits and vegetables. Thank you so much, Brother Dre Cash. It was Dr. Delbert Blair. he's been telling us we're going to ascend into 5D. We need to use colloidal silver and what else he talked about? Copper to heal us, to ingest and monoatomic gold. These are the things that you can do. Get out in nature, drink water, eat living foods, repair your relationships, learn to forgive yourself and others, and learn to be forgiving, learn to ask for forgiveness, learn to become a good human being or continue to become a good human being. Ask the Creator to give you a pure heart and cleanse your heart yourself by getting rid of any low vibrational frequencies. This way you will raise in vibration and you'll be the change that you would like to see in 5D. So there is a way that you can invest. It doesn't have to be in precious metals. It doesn't have to be in land or seeds or businesses or any of these things that we always stress. It can be in yourself and your relationships, because you're going to need family and community in the era into which we're going. So my name is Dr. Kia Pruitt. I trust that I've said something to raise your vibrations and to inspire you to create the most amazing, magnificent life that you desire and deserve. Thank you, family. I love you so much. Peace.